Hey guys, back with another of our discussions that stem from us taking a look actively at reading Sharon Creech's Walk Two Moons. Today we actually just jumped right into it. We had a little bit of a brief discussion based on the afterburn that I had you guys complete at the end of class and for homework last night about the whole plank eye problem, which I talked about in yesterday's post. And if you want to go back and get a feel for the conversation we had at the beginning of class, it was very similar to yesterday's post, in which we said, you know, it's always very, very easy for us to pick out in other people what they're doing wrong. It's a lot harder for us to take a look at ourselves and change what it is that we're doing and see where we are in terms of when we look around and we see, oh my gosh, the situation I'm in, it's all my doing. Okay? So if you want to go take a look at that one, it's yesterday's post. Today's, you see that I have entitled, Sharing is Caring. And yes, it's kind of cliche, and yes, it's kind of a little kid-ish. But if you paid attention to what we read in class today, and the things that we discussed, and the kind of things that you were noticing about the conflicts, and that we were talking about with the conflicts, and that we were analyzing in our organizers, you notice that, and I'll actually take directly out of the book, a lot of times, when we are in the middle of situations, we have a tendency to get inside of ourselves and to really not open up and to really not share. And that can kind of mean that we're acting very selfishly. Before I actually get to that, there's one last thing that we talked about in class with regards to not thinking about your actions until you've actually, until it's actually a little bit too late. And I guess that this can actually fall in with the whole sharing is caring message. But we're talking about being reflective and looking at ourselves and really trying to understand what our role in our own lives is. And as we're taking a look at that, we're noticing that using the example of the boy who tried to rob Graham and Gramps and Sal, he wasn't on private property. He brought a knife to try to scare them, and he wanted to rob them. And his actions actually led to Graham, Gramps, and Sal having to ignore that snake that slid into the water that turned out to be a deadly water moccasin that actually bit Graham. And as soon as the reality struck about that boy and what his actions caused, because Graham is seriously infected with this venom from this deadly water moccasin. And it wasn't until after that consequence hit that boy that he decided to change his actions. And that's a really important thing that we talked about, is that you know, you can't wait until something really horrible happens to take a step back and look and see how your actions might have consequences. That's A number one. That led us into the next chapter when we talked about, or actually two chapters down the line, when we got that scene in the Winterbottom household where Phoebe and Prudence were treating Mom like garbage. Like horrible, horrible garbage, yelling at her, saying, you don't understand, treating her terribly, even though it was very clear to Sal, who was on the outside of the situation, that what was happening was an awful lot like what was happening right before Sal's mom took off. Mom didn't feel appreciated. Mom was feeling sad. Prudence and Phoebe kind of brushed Mom off and said, no, 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 don't talk to me. Oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that, you don't understand, blah, blah, blah. Sal remembers the day before Mom decided to leave, she asked Sal to go on a walk with her like multiple times. Multiple times. We found this out actually in the Good Man chapter. Multiple times she asked her daughter, please come take this walk with me. And Sal said, no, get away. Why? Why? No, you've asked me so many times. I don't want to go. Leave me alone. We act a lot without thinking. And our consequences sometimes only become clear to us after it's too late. But Sal's in an interesting position. Because knowing all of that, all of what we know about Sal and the situation and Mom leaving, Sal already knew that, right? Because that already happened to her. Well, she's now watching it happen to Phoebe, and it's come up a bunch of times. If Sal is seeing this same pattern, knowing what the end result was in her life and how horrible it's been for her, and the amount of conflict and turmoil it's caused in her own family's life, why on earth isn't she saying something to Phoebe? When we were discussing it in class, being good readers, trying to connect to the situation, trying to put ourselves in that position, they're saying, well, maybe that Sal didn't want to say anything because she didn't want to make Phoebe angry. She didn't want to make Phoebe upset. She wanted to still be her friend. She didn't want to come off as a know-it-all. She didn't want to... But remember, we talked and we said, you know, she didn't have to be insulting when she brought up the subject of maybe treating her mom better. Might it have been something easy to say, hey, Phoebe, you know, I don't want to be too personal or anything, but a lot of what I see in your mom is how my mom was feeling right before she left, and I don't know if it's going to happen or if it's not going to happen, but maybe just ask your mom how she's doing sometimes, or maybe just do something for yourself and ask your mom if you can do anything for her. That might make her feel wanted and useful and like she's got a place and a purpose, because I know my mom left because she didn't feel like she had a purpose. I don't know, I think that might have worked. Because as we find out, in the middle of chapter 18, the good man, that's exactly why she left. Mom says, I need to figure out who I am again. And she says directly, I need to do it on my own. I can't think. All I see here is what I am not. I'm not brave, I'm not good, and I wish someone would call me by my real name. My real name isn't Sugar, it's Chanhassen. She doesn't think she fits. And while the situation in the family is completely different, the emotions are the same. See, Sal's mom doesn't feel like she fits because she feels like she's not good enough. Like Sal's dad and Sal are too lovey and they're too good and they're too genuine and they're too nice, and she doesn't feel like that. And so she's almost felt like an outsider from the family. Well, isn't that what's happening in Phoebe's life and in Phoebe's mom's life? Now, the actions are a little bit different, but the feelings remain the same. And so Sal could really show how much she cares by sharing some of what happened in her own life with Phoebe. But Phoebe doesn't even know anything. All she knows is that Mom is gone. Sal hasn't told her anything. I'm not telling you to run out and tell your deepest, darkest secrets to strangers, and I told you that today. But if you've got a friend who's going through something and you can help them, just like if we have an education, we don't use it, it ends up in the garbage can. If we have experiences that can help somebody and we don't share them, they end up in the garbage can. They're useless. Nobody else can learn through our mistakes or our experiences. And that's what life's about, guys. If we can spare the people who we're closest to from going through similar hardships that we've gone through just by sharing, share. Sharing is caring. I know it's cliche and I know that sounds babyish, but seriously, communication is at the heart of who we are as people. And if we don't feel like we can communicate with our closest friends or our family members, then we really have to take a step back and analyze what it is that we're doing. How it is that we're sharing who we are as people with the other people who are important in our lives. I want to hit one more point before we end, because you're going to be writing a fire starter about it tomorrow when we get here. And so that those of you who are responsible enough to be watching me right now are actually going to get this. At the end of this business of the good man, and we find out, you know, why Sal's mom left for all those personal reasons, and that she's gone, and that, you know, Dad wouldn't even let Sal go with him to try to get her back. He wouldn't allow it. When he came back, she was really angry that he didn't allow her to come with him. And he even said, on the long day that it was when we traveled up to Euclid from our farm, which we just had to leave, get away from, so that we could try to get over Mom, says, I wish that my father was not such a good man, so there would be someone to blame for my mother's leaving. I didn't want to blame her. She was my mother, and she was a part of it. See, as human beings, sometimes we look for people to blame. We look for something to blame. We look for someone to blame. We look for anything that we can grasp. And we forget that sometimes things just happen. And they're painful, and they're harmful, and the way we get through them is by leaning on the people we care about the most. And I know that it seems like sometimes when people are in the middle of stuff that they're dealing with, we want to say just, I'm going to leave them alone, I'm not going to talk about it, I'm going to allow them to. Sometimes the best thing for us and for them in those situations is to talk about it. And don't accuse anybody of, being nasty or being this or being that. Talk to them really genuinely. Even if they are being nasty or mean or selfish or whatever, talk to them nicely about it. Don't go accusing them. These are things that we're starting to learn just by digging into the lives of these characters. This is what a good reader does. And remember, we're practicing this every day. We're keeping track of the plot. We're keeping track of the conflict and its consequences. We're keeping track of the different characters and how they interact with each other. We're keeping track of how we interact with the characters. We're making predictions so that we can stick with this and we can try to figure out logically someone else's situation, because remember yesterday, it's easier to see it in somebody else and not so much in us. So if we prepare ourselves using somebody else's situation before we're even faced with it, we're that much more prepared when or if that happens to us. And I encourage you to make sure you are communicating with people you care about the most, because we're not guaranteed anything in this life. I could walk out this door today and be hit by a bus and never get to talk to any of you again. That's why I talk about life so much in this class, is because I want to pass it on to you in hopes of helping you in the future. I care about each and every one of you. And that's why it's so important to me that some days when we need to only read like half a chapter or one chapter, we need to talk about life for the rest of it, I'm willing to do that. Always know that you can come to me and ask me questions. You've got guidance counselors who care about you. You've got other teachers who care about you. You've got family, friends, people who care about you. Understand that. And know that it's not a burden to go ask for help for them. They want to help you. They care about you. I'll see you guys tomorrow for more of this. Great stuff. Great thinking so far, guys. Keep it up.